大家了解双语教育这个话题。
To the power of I plus 1 equals 0.
Find solutions to live peacefully and
When we read to our children, it also provides
Very important for our kids to learn to assess risk.
Building on the success of last year's parent webinar series, we're excited to commence this year's program with a range of very current and pertinent topics.
您好，吕博士。今天我们有几条关于人工智能的问题想要请教您。我们要中要华应该如何去帮助学生去发展全球视野，并拥有适配人工智能时代的各项能力呢？我们又该如何为学生準備尚未出現但可能會出現的工作呢？
其實要中要華喺好多年前已經提出咗無牆教室啊、學習共同體呢一類嘅理念啦。呢啲理念嘅目的係想突破人為嘅對課室、班別、科目、年級以至師生嘅限制。呢啲概念強調嘅學科整合，以學習者為中心，強調主動探究而唔係被動嘅學習，強調知識嘅建構而唔係接收已有嘅成果。重視鼓勵學生面對真實世界，學會挖掘問題、建構問題、提出假設，做一啲相應嘅調擬，揾出解決問題嘅方案，並且動手去解決。喺呢種學習過程裏面，學生嘅思維能力、溝通能力、協作、創意、解難、執行能力等等，都會得到全面嘅發展。而呢啲正好就係發展全球視野同埋回應人工智能時代嘅各種必備條件。
對未來迷茫的家長和學生們，您會給出什麼樣的建議呢？
有一點要先強調啊，教育主要面對嘅未來係為下一代面對未來做好準備。由於我哋要培養下一代面對未來嘅挑戰，作為家長，我哋一定要放下自己個人嘅經驗積累嘅成見。以前我哋唔係好重視嘅能力，日後可能會成為成功嘅關鍵。所以家長要從呢個角度去重新思考，你對你嘅子女教育嘅要求究竟應該係點樣？至於學生方面我想借用孔子一句話：君子不器。器指嘅係專門用途嘅器具，我哋唔應該好似器具咁樣被塑造為只有某種專門用途而唔能夠改變嘅工具。所以作為學生，你哋要培養多元開放嘅學習興趣，對唔同嘅事物都要有好奇心，要培養終身學習嘅習慣，尤其是閱讀嘅習慣。咁樣你先至會有足夠嘅適應能力，胸襟視野，因應唔同嘅情況，做出相應而恰當嘅改變。喺日新月異嘅世界裏面，做到大學裏面講嘅一句說話：九日新，一日新，又日新。
Good evening, parents, staff, and friends of Yucheng and Yuhua schools. Welcome to the last episode of our parent webinar series 2 this school year. My name is Kian, School Business Manager at YSS Shanghai Pudong campuses, and I will be your host for this webinar. This evening's topic is the future of education, resilience in a complex world. We're very delighted to welcome both of the presenters, the Western co-principal, Mr. Andy Clapperton, and the Chinese assistant co-principal, Ms. Cici Shen, from YCI's Shanghai Pudong campuses. In this webinar, both Cici and Andy will explore why a focus on resilience and independence is so crucial in an educational environment where rows of desks with the teacher at the front just don't cut it anymore. Join us for this thought-provoking webinar as we explore the crucial role of resilience and independence in education and how we can work together to prepare our students for the challenges of the future. As usual, we'll have a Q&A session towards the end of the presentation, so feel free to leave any questions that you might have in the chat boxes. We'll try to reply as best as we can and bring some to Andy and Cici to hear what they think. All right, it's time now to hear from our presenters, Mr. Andy Clapperton and Ms. Cici Shen.
Good evening and welcome to tonight's webinar. My name is Andy Clapperton.
大家晚上好，我是 Cici。
We are going to be looking at the future of education and specifically nurturing resilience in what we know as an exceptionally complex world. Why is resilience important? What actually constitutes resilience? And how to foster and nurture it in our children and our students.
在分享这3个部分的时候，我们会结合一些个人的小故事、心理学的相关理论背景，以及分别来自于学校和家长的一些不同的观点和想法。当然，在我们研讨会的最后，欢迎您提问，与我们进一步的交流。
So we know that everybody has a story of resilience, no matter how small or how large. And Cici and I would like to set the scene a little bit by beginning with one each of our own. Now, in my time, I've obviously done quite a number of job interviews, and most of them, not all, but most of them have started with a question that was not about my degrees, not about my qualifications, not about my experience as an educator. It was pretty much always about cycling, which is why I've chosen to kick off with this photo that's here. And this is a photo before a friend and I, a very, very close friend and I, undertook a journey by bike from Beijing to London and actually a little bit beyond. This really relating to resilience can be seen in a number of different ways, and perhaps the first of those is looking at mental resilience. I think the most common phrase that we heard when we kicked off that journey in the first couple of weeks was 不可能. Constantly, everywhere we went, we were being told, you can't do it, it's impossible, no way. And this really actually forced us to change our story when we were asked what we were doing. We stopped saying we were cycling to London and we started saying we were cycling to the next town, whatever that was, whether it was Datong or Baotou. We really just toned it down because we couldn't convince people that we were actually going to do this. But the inside story, however, is perhaps more compelling, and that was that the number of people telling us we couldn't do it made us more determined than ever. Of course, there were a number of trials and tribulations along the way, and having never really cycled before, neither of us were prepared for what was in store. And one of those things was the cold. As we crossed from the Chinese border in Xinjiang over into Kyrgyzstan, we encountered temperatures of something along the lines of -30, which during the daytime was manageable, but at night was bitterly, bitterly cold. And this really showed us what physical resilience is all about, and actually taught us that when you put your mind to it, the human body is capable of really incredible things. Skipping over things here quite a bit, you can see a picture now of us when we were back at my hometown in the UK, and perhaps I should have mentioned that I'm diabetic, and there were a whole load of challenges that came with managing my sugar levels and the insulin and the diabetes on the trip. But the point of this picture is actually more about social resilience and the challenges that come with working closely with other people. We were incredibly close for the whole journey. We were living in a tent for 7 months, and even when you're the greatest of friends, it's not hard to imagine how at times that can be something that you really need to work at and really need to overcome. So when we arrived back, we were asked to write an article for Cycling Plus magazine in the UK, and I would just like to share now with you the conclusion that we came to in that article, because I think it draws some parallels with the presentation that we're giving today about how we can nurture resilience in the young kids that we're working with and the leaders of tomorrow. And when we concluded, we said what we've learnt on this trip is that the only obstacle to having the experience of a lifetime is yourself. Many people on the trip told us of their desire to do something similar, yet they got bogged down by the perceived problems. So why not just cycle off and let some of those perceived problems turn into real problems? It's much more exciting.
感谢 Andy 分享的个人故事，让我对你非常的钦佩。Andy 的故事其实很好的向我们诠释了将别人眼中的不可能变成可能，可能又变成现实的关键品质就是韧性，让我十分的有感触。那接下来我分享的故事，在我的人生当中其实对我触动也比较大，是在四川当志愿者的经历。不知大家是否还能回忆起2008年的512汶川地震？当时的灾情十分严重，很多山体滑落，有一些村庄被掩埋。那我当时报名参加了赶赴四川的灾后心理援助队。我当时的工作呢，是支持当地的帐篷学校，也就是主要负责学生的灾后心理疏导以及安抚。让我当时印象非常深刻的是一个高考班。当时呢，他们有不少的孩子失去了亲人，也亲眼目睹了身边的同学为了救人而牺牲。可以说在那个当下，他们失去了所有，包括他们的家、他们的学校，甚至没有地方再让他们参加高考。很长的一段时间中，孩子们每天都做着噩梦，晚上不敢入眠。就在这样的灾难性经历面前，我们本以为他们可能会一蹶不振，我们的帐篷学校可能出勤率也不会那么高。但是出乎我们意料的是，没有一个孩子放弃。不管条件怎么艰苦，他们始终排除各种阻碍，每天来上课，下午也积极地接受心理辅导，做着自己能做的一切。他们教会了我活在当下，珍惜眼前。最终我们也帮助他们赶赴县城去参加高考，并且让我们欣喜的是，在高考中他们获得了极为优异的成绩。那这张照片是我们心理援助队给孩子们举办了一个非常简易的毕业典礼和成人仪式。在这些孩子们身上，我看到了韧性的力量。那段经历其实对我个人的人生也产生了非常多的积极影响。所以说，无论是疫情或者是灾情，苦难本身或许没有明确的意义，可我们面对苦难的态度和选择却赋予了它意义。就像奥地利著名的心理学家 Victor 在他的作品《活出生命的意义》当中提到，无论我们经历过怎么样的挫折和低谷，人们一直拥有在任何环境当中选择自己的态度和行为方式的自由。而韧性对每个人来说，无论你是什么样子的年龄、职业、国籍、身份，韧性都能够帮助我们获得持续积极向上的力量。那到底什么是韧性？韧性好像听似非常的熟悉，但是又模棱两可、陌生的感觉。其实英文的 resilient 常见的中文翻译有很多，包括韧性、恢复力、复原力、适应力、弹性等等。最早其实出自于物理学的概念，表示材料在塑形、变形和破裂过程当中吸收能量的能力。那韧性越好，发生脆裂、断裂的可能性就越小。这也让我想到了竹子，它最能体现韧的品质。在寒冬时节，竹子仍然能够保持顽强的生命力，身处逆境，处之泰然，去而不折。也因为竹子材料的韧性，它被广泛运用于我们生活的各个方面。 那再让我们来看看学术界对于韧性的定义。美国心理学会将韧性定义为个人面对逆境、创伤、悲剧、威胁或其他重大压力的良好适应过程，也就是困难经历的反弹能力。那我们不仅要问，那韧性到底是一种品格还是能力？其实都是。那作为一种能力或者说技能，这意味着韧性是可以培养的，你练习的越多，就会变得越来越有韧性。那虽然每个人受到自己个人的成长经历、自身状况的一系列因素的影响，在一开始的时候，每一个人的韧性水平是有差异，但是随着科学的方法，是可以不断的精进，促进每个人的心智发展。总之，韧性的培养是一个长期的、有意识的、有系统的改变认知和行为的行动。
So let's take a moment to ground some of this talk about resilience in our current context. And this graph, as you will see, is not terribly scientific, but I would argue very widely accepted. And if we are, as a human race, are the little man on the green line awaiting the exponential change, we've just kind of seen a little bit of a taste of this with ChatGPT and with the recent advances in generative AI. What is ahead of us? And bearing that in mind, where is the world of education right now? So the chart that you can see on screen is the result of an OECD study, a video study from 2020 that looked at classroom management, at social emotional support and instruction in 8 different regions. And looking at instruction here, you'll see that Shanghai fared exceptionally well, and overall the 8 different regions did pretty well. But then when you look at social emotional support, there's quite a dramatic drop-off. And if we're including resilience in social emotional support, then that asks a lot of questions of our education systems and our schools today. So if we know that the future offices that our children, our students might end up working in have the potential to look something like this, then how is it that most of the world still prepares students in an environment that looks like this? I alluded to some different types of resilience when I was talking about my bike trip before, and I'd like to drill down into these a little further now. They are physical resilience, mental resilience, social and emotional resilience. And these are lenses through which we can view the challenges that face the young people who we are seeking to guide to graduate with us as an organisation and a school and be able to go out into the world and thrive.
The M stands for mental, and the health stands for health. Yeah, so mental health.
At YCIS Pudong, we are very much moving away from traditional classroom environments into bilingual learning communities that are really places that allow for flexibility and adaptability and, of course, therefore bounce back ability and resilience in our students. So what you're seeing here is a walk through our Year 5 learning community. It's a normal day, there's nothing special going on here, this is how our students will work. And what you can see, I guess, is students working in teams, in particular working independently. They are making decisions on how they go about solving the problem they've been tasked with. Also, the learning is integrated. They're focusing on well-being, but they're also learning about persuasive language. They're learning research skills in science, and through the way that they're addressing their products, they're learning creativity and they're developing their skills in the arts. Looking at the staff then, I think this is interesting is that if you think back to the photos at the beginning of the webinar, the staff are not stood at the front of the classroom lecturing. Rather, they are supporting on a needs basis and encouraging the students in the areas in which they need to develop. So what this is all about is really social resilience, and that's what our students are developing on a day-to-day basis. That is the ability to collaborate, the ability to listen and to empathise, and all of these skills are skills which help them to problem solve and really help them in developing skills in project management. As a school and as an organisation, we certainly undertake every opportunity and make the most of it to nurture physical resilience in our students. The photo in the background is from the Duke of Edinburgh's International Award Adventurous Journey, and this was, in this case, a cycling trip and a challenge for students to undertake well over 200 kilometres over a few days, and it was one that really built these students, and certainly will be a memorable experience. We provide lots of these, and it's a big part of our programs at YCIS Pudong. When we think about mental resilience, we're talking about the knockbacks that you take when something doesn't go your way in class, you're trying to solve a problem, and we're really looking at inquiry and problem solving skills here. So bringing two themes together of bamboo and bicycles, a great example of a project our students undertook was to build a bamboo bicycle, actually several in fact. We had a design technology team who were actually building the bikes themselves. There was also a physics team looking into the pros and cons of bamboo versus steel versus alloy versus carbon fibre. The computer science team actually built a website for a real life company to sell these bikes. And an environmental systems and societies team was looking at the sustainability of bamboo. Building emotional resilience in our students is obviously a day-to-day process, but we also have a focus in Wellness Week. And our students this year teamed up with the Community Centre Shanghai to bring the Clothesline project to our school, and we're going to ask them to share a little bit about this with you now. It's a wonderful example of developing emotional resilience.
There's a huge stigma surrounding mental health. For starters, many people don't really take it seriously. They don't see it as concrete as a physical illness.
Mental well-being is something that is intangible, you can't see.
The Clothesline project to me means breaking the barrier of stigmatized mental health.
So in my school, we do every year level, every students in each year level would bring out clothes, and we would write messages to people that I feel like messages that we would also want to receive from people.
After they have painted, we put them onto a wall. We have every single shirt onto the wall, and then we have that exhibit in the school for around a week, and then we take those t-shirts and we exhibit them to another school, and that recycles.
Having this visual symbolism, this representation there, and I think it creates an environment that is a lot more welcoming and comfortable for people to come out and say, hey, I need help.
People that are going through mental health, they will see these shirts and they'll go, I'm not alone. It's because they can relate to what these shirts are saying.
As more people grow aware of mental health and the different issues that people are facing, the people who are facing those issues actually would realize kind of that they would be accepted, and that they will become less afraid to open up to other people around them.
I remember when we did it at my school, many kids were like, oh, what's mental health? What does this mean? What does that mean? So I felt Clothesline was a very good opportunity for students and teachers to learn more about mental health and reasons why there's a taboo around it, or why it's so stigmatized.
刚才 Andy 给我们举了非常多很好的例子，在学校当中，我们是如何系统的、有意识的帮助孩子全方位的充分发展他的各方面的韧性。那接下来我将给大家一些建议，在我们的日常生活当中，我们可以怎么发展韧性，并且要注意哪些地方，以及有哪一些认知上的误区我们要避免的。一、有关环境。那当我们谈到培养韧性的时候，那是不是就要创造一些环境让孩子吃苦呢？那从一定程度上来说，是的，适度短暂的正面压力是儿童健康成长过程当中的必要因素。但是这里要注意，长期的逆境环境在他的生长过程当中也是会带来一系列的身体、心理和行为问题。因而创设逆境的环境，我们要考虑到的是适宜度。比如年龄小的孩子，我们可以通过一些竞技类的游戏，让他们体验适度的挫折和失落，相对而言比较容易接受。此外，哈佛大学儿童发展中心的研究也表明，除了负面的体验以外，正面的体验对于人们的心理韧性的打造也是非常重要的。因而不能只是盲目的吃苦，只创设吃苦的环境，而是要通过学习这一些负面的经历，把它的消极因素转化为一次正面的积极的学习体验，帮助孩子们理解从错误中学习，持续累积这些积极的体验，重视他的每一次小的成长、小的成就、小的进步，也能成为孩子们持续发展韧性当中的一个能量之源。二、情绪。韧性的培养不代表不能有负面情绪，或者一味要求孩子要减少他的负面情绪。其实高韧性人群同样和其他普通人一样，他们也会有很强烈的消极情绪，但是不同的是，他们能够意识到、察觉到自己的情绪，能和自己的压力和焦虑共处，并且更好的去适应、处理不同情境下的情绪。所以不是没有情绪，而是我们要鼓励孩子们去认识自己的情绪，识别自己的情绪，与自己的情绪共处，并且通过自我调节来帮助他逐渐的去解压。三、认知。在培养韧性时，要提升学生的认知灵活性，也就是要帮助孩子能够从多个角度看待问题和失败，能够分析问题的本质和影响，从而能够更好地应对复杂环境当中的挑战。认知还包括了对自己比较有清晰且客观的自我认知。当事情发生的时候，他能够客观地分析归因，哪些是主观原因，哪些是客观原因，哪些是他可以改变的，哪些是不可能改变的，从而理性分析，调整策略，聚焦于积极寻求不同的解决办法，而非过多的苛责于自己。四、行动。就像 Andy 的故事当中告诉我们，在任何困难和挑战面前，如果你不行动起来，那一切将化为零。所以面对未知的挑战时，我们要理解孩子产生的焦虑、害怕、想要逃离的无助感是非常常见的表现，而无助感是最容易让人失去动力和勇气。那为了对抗无助感，我们就需要培养孩子能够有掌控感。掌控感的意思，也就是让他觉得自己可以控制自己的事情，自己能够做决定，自己能够有行动的动力和勇气。因而在日常，我们要鼓励帮助孩子设定微小的、可达成的，但又是不断可以升级的挑战性目标，鼓励他持续的行动，并且逐渐的实现它们，这能够最大限度的提升掌控感。那在这里我就要提醒各位家长们，有时也要非常有技巧的学做偷懒的爸爸妈妈，凡事要避免去替孩子全部替他们去思考、决定、包办解决所有的问题，需要留一些空间给到孩子们。五、意义感。不难发现，当孩子喜欢一件事情的时候，觉得这件事情对他而言是十分有意义的，就非常容易专注，进入忘我的心流状态。不管面临怎么样的困难或挑战，他都能够乐在其中，产生积极美好的体验，从而增强他的幸福感。 因此，时时帮助我们的孩子去找寻生活的意义，追求一个有意义的目标，不局限于眼前的压力和挑战，而是找到真正让他感觉到快乐、获得能量的动力，找到自己的内在动机。我们经常说，有使命感的人较少感到焦虑和压力。像尼采所说的，知生命之义者，可成生命之重。6. 社交网络。我们往往容易将痛苦中恢复身心健康的修炼看成纯粹的个人事情。其实人有很强的社会属性，我们有意识地去建立关系，并且相互不断帮助、合作、共情，也是人们培养韧性、从逆境中快速恢复的关键要素。所以我们要鼓励孩子们发展自己的社交能力，同时能够主动向外求助家人、老师或者自己朋友的支持和帮助，从他们自己的社会支持网络当中吸取力量，从而更好地应对挑战和困难。那么这些积极的人际关系也会带给他一种深刻的情感安全感，让他觉得无论发生什么事情，无论有着什么样子的困难，至少有很多人支持他。7. 最后不得不提的就是身体健康，这是韧性的基础。一个人的身体健康状态下，才能够更好应对挑战和压力。身体健康也包括了良好的体格、合理的饮食和充足的睡眠等等。那这些因素可以使人们更有能力和精力去处理挑战和压力，并更好地适应不同情境下的变化和困难。总之，当我们聚焦于这一些关键因素时，其实在帮助每个孩子打造自己的一个韧性飞轮。通过韧性飞轮，也就是帮助他妥善处理好自己与自己内心、自己与他人和自己与世界之间的关系，并且持续的让这个飞轮转动起来，进而可以支持他有能力面对人生当中的挑战和阻力，从挫折中恢复，以及最后形成自己的一个内部转化。将挑战和危机自然而然地成为他积极成长的契机。那对于未知的困难和挑战，能够应对自如。当然，这需要学校、家长和整个社会紧密合作，持续的努力。
At Yucheng and Yuhua, we know the importance and we value the importance of the family and the school working together in partnership for our children and our students. And we have a fabulous group of parent ambassadors at YCIS Pudong, who you can see in the picture behind me. We've invited 2 of these, Ning and Hannah, who are both long-time YCIS parents, and we have asked them to have basically an informal chat about their perspectives on resilience.
Yeah, so when we talk about the resilience, we talk about our children. I think as parents, we need to be resilient. We need to learn to be more resilient, because I believe a resilient parent can raise a resilient kid. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Children often learn by example. I think children of all ages, and seeing the example of a parent who's resilient on a day-to-day basis,
right.
Of course that should help you become more resilient yourself.
Right. But what kind of parents, like resilient parents, look like?
We talked earlier about the need to not be afraid to make mistakes, or not be afraid to not be perfect.
Right.
To be vulnerable, to put yourself out there, to know that you might make mistakes, but that you can bounce back.
Yeah.
And you can have another go. You can learn from your mistakes.
Right. And we also talk about the image, like a tree, like a big tree, strong, have a really big roots, so to be grounded. As parents, that's very important. Like we talk about the resilient, we need to be grounded because we need to bounce back. So if we don't stand still strongly, it's hard for us to be resilient.
Yeah. To be able to weather any storm.
Absolutely. Right. Yeah. Yeah, I think so. Another point we just talk about is as parents, we need to really stay close with school, to work together with school and teachers to support our kids. And I think that's very, very critical because school, for our school, they have their own system, technologies, concepts, And as parents, if they have no idea about this, if they have a different understanding about these concepts and terminologies, that could give some confusion to our kids. So I think that's very important. And my suggestion is parents should try their best to attend all these activities the school organized for parents.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I think I would look to teachers and staff at school and within the foundation as experts in education. I'm no expert. I haven't been a parent of children this age before. I'm not a trained teacher. I haven't brought up teenagers in today's world before, but our teachers and our staff have, and it's something they do on a daily basis.
Right.
So yeah, I'm definitely take advantage of any opportunity to be able to come into school and attend any workshops or talks in person, to watch any of the webinars that are broadcast online as well.
Yeah.
And I always learn from all of those events.
Yeah.
I always come away with ideas and knowledge that I didn't have beforehand. It always changes my opinion, usually for the better also,
right,
about whatever the topic has been.
Yeah, so all these webinars, all these kind of coffee mornings, like parent-teacher meetings, I think this is a great opportunity for parents to learn to be a better parents. Yeah, and then talk about that, I think as parents, we need to be a lifelong learner to stay resilient, right? So we can grow together with our kids, our children, when they grow older especially.
Absolutely. Yeah, I attended a workshop in person recently about ChatGPT.
Yeah.
It's something that I think will have a big impact upon education in the future to come. I'm not somebody who knows anything about AI. I was quite nervous about some of the negative things that I'd heard about AI, especially its potential impacts on education before going to that talk. And it was really interesting to be able to talk to not only teachers and students, but experts in the field,
right,
about how that will impact education in the future and the positive impact that it could have on education.
Yeah.
And it really changed my view. I really came away feeling much more informed, much more positive, and kind of looking forward to that challenge in the future rather than seeing it as something to be scared of. In terms of resilience and not being afraid to kind of put yourself out there, or not being afraid to make mistakes. We talked even about the language that we would use for this interview.
Right.
Do you remember?
Right.
And whether we were confident enough or not to be able to do an interview in our non-native language, and what that would mean in terms of an example of resilience and not being afraid to make mistakes and having a go anyway.
Right. And really focus on something that's really important and really essential. For example, when they read to our kids during the book week, my English is not my native language, but when I read in English, I think I just want to show our kids that reading is more important than your accent, and be confident, really share your passion of readings with others. All these things are more relevant to this world, to people.
To have a go.
Right.
And to show that example of being resilient.
Right.
And what that means to you.
Absolutely. So, and then when we talk about resilience and bounce back, what's the word? Bounce back.
Bounce back ability.
Yeah. I think since stability is very, very relevant to this kind of capability. We need to provide our kids a stable learning environment, is that they have a stable mentality, and they have a stable teachers and concept system, so they can have a really space to explore themselves, to learn to be a
safe place around them where they're not afraid to take on those challenges and make those mistakes.
Right.
谢谢汉娜和您的分享。其实一直以来，我们十分感恩，在我们教育教学的过程当中，家长们和学校密切合作，为我们的孩子提供一个全面的支持系统。那今天我们也想介绍给大家一个工具包，围绕刚刚我们说到的在培养韧性的过程当中要注意的一些元素，围绕这个韧性飞轮，我们提供了8个小工具，大家可以在家里试一试。 首先，第一个有关于环境。刚刚我们谈到了要有意识的创设环境，让学生能够适度的犯错，在错误当中进行学习，然后培养他的成长性思维。那么在这个宝贵的教育契机当中，非常有效的一点就是让学生做记录，把这一些体验、经历、反思都可以记录下来。比如说图片上的就是一个小水桶，这个水桶就代表了他的一个压力桶，边上的一个小水滴就是每一次他遇到的挑战，或者是他的一些情绪，他可以直观的记录下来，然后贴在小水桶上，也可以跟爸爸妈妈进行一些深入的讨论探讨，下一次再犯错的时候还可以来看一看他的小水桶。这是一个比较不错的很直观的方式。同时的话，不仅要记录那一些犯错的时刻，那一些负面的体验，我们还要鼓励家长帮助孩子们去记录一些快乐的，让他能够缓解压力的，能够得到正能量的体验。比如说可以家里准备一个这样子的小瓶子，当他发生一些快乐的事情，让他高兴的，让他自我满足的，可以写在纸片上，然后放在那个罐子当中。一段时间，家长可以跟孩子共同打开这个罐子，一起来阅读，这些都是一些比较不错的一些正面鼓励和正面强化。
The second strategy is simple. It's name your feeling, and it's really important to articulate how you are feeling as a child, but I would argue as well as an adult, to be honest. On the right, you can see a photo from our social emotional counsellor's room for ECM Primary, where there's an option for using pictures to help articulate this, and it might be using words as well. Slightly older students might be able to articulate their top worries, and you can see a worksheet here which gets them to do this. And as they get older, of course, they have a much broader vocabulary to be able to express themselves. Now, this feeling wheel, emotion and feeling wheel is something that we would use in school, but actually the point is that as parents, you can also have conversations about how your children might be feeling at a particular time if they're struggling, but equally, if they're really happy and they're doing well, being able to articulate this is crucial.
3. 关于认知，刚刚我们说了要帮助孩子能够从不同的角度去思考问题，那思维导图就是一个很好的方法，它能够帮助孩子将他的一个思考过程能够记录下来，能够可视化，那么家长也可以参与到他的一个探讨过程。那同时还可以帮助孩子们用图表的方式进行一个自我的探索，比如说爸爸妈妈可以坐下来跟孩子一起讨论你喜欢什么，你觉得你的长处是什么，你觉得哪个方面你需要持续的去发展，你最近的兴趣爱好是什么，你在发生这件事情的时候你会怎么去处理，你对这件事情有什么样子的想法。那么过一段时间再来回顾这张表格，可能他会有一些新的爱好、新的兴趣、新的想法，所以用这些图表把他的想法可视化，也可以帮助学生进一步的了解自己，探索自己。
As adults, we know that we're all different and we work in different ways and respond to situations in different ways. So giving choices is crucial for our kids as well. And there's many different ways of doing this. There's different coping strategies, and you can see this on the photo on the left, which again is from our counsellor's room. And making sure that you allow space for your kids to, say, walk away and then come back to an issue later, or to be able to have a discussion about it straight off according to their needs. It might be that they would rather sit down and draw out their challenge. They may like articulating it in words, but giving choices as to how they do it is crucial.
5. 为了培养孩子的意义感和目标感，经常和孩子们进行一些顶层设计的探讨，他的终极目标、长远的目标是什么，然后才分割成中期的和近期的小目标。那么对于顶层的目标，那是一直坚守不容易放弃的，但是对于小目标可以进行灵活的变动。同时或者用这样图表的方式帮助孩子进行分割目标，把目标分解成初阶、中阶和高阶，小步达成，小步实现，这样更有利于他的一个目标达成度。
we all have heroes in our lives for the little things, the people that make your day that little bit smoother, the person that brings you a coffee in the morning or whatever it happens to be. And for our kids, this is exactly the same. Again, it's really important that we help them talk about this and realize this, appreciate those everyday heroes, the people who make their lives that little bit happier in whatever small, thoughtful and kind way that they may like to talk about. It's important to talk about it.
第7，有关于健康。那我们知道，高压力、高焦虑，人一直在紧张或者是负面情绪下面，容易造成健康问题。所以我们要教孩子一些比较简单的、快速的，能够让自己放松、能够平静的方式方法。那腹式呼吸、深呼吸以及瑜伽、冥想，其实都可以达成这样子的一个不错的效果，并且上手非常快，大家也可以试试。
And finally, looking at being systematic about this change, about this approach, it's important to come up with a plan. There are many different resilience plan examples. The one here is talking about support, strategies, sagacity, and solution seeking. But whatever works for you and most importantly for your kids, then go with that.
那刚刚我们介绍了比较多的方式方法或者是小工具，家长们也无需焦虑，如果不能一下子完全的可以灵活运用，可以尝试一些小策略，哪一个策略对你来说是最方便、最容易、最能够上手的，那么就选它，设定一些小目标，持续的去慢慢的往前进就可以了。最后，我们希望用一张图片来为大家进行总结有关韧性的培养。首先要创造平衡的环境，在潜移默化中促进孩子发展积极的心态和他们的成长型思维，增加孩子的活力，提升他的一个身体健康和素质。此外，让孩子能够获得成就感，形成正向的循环，可以从身边的小事开始累积。另外就是要培养他的一个意义感和目标感，同时建立良好的人际关系。当然最后就是要参与其中，在充分思考之后要落实于他们的行动当中，动起来。当然要实现这一切是需要学校、家长和整个社区之间持续长期密切的合作。就像图片当中的这一条龙舟，我们希望我们能够一起围绕着共同的方向、共同的理解、共同的目标，持续的去支持我们孩子，为他们提供全面的全人教育，以帮助他们准备好复杂的未来世界。
Sissy and I would like to leave you with a question to go away with tonight. Thinking back to her transformational, life-changing experiences in Sichuan in 2008 and my own in my bike ride from Beijing to London, thinking about the incredible resilient properties of bamboo, and most importantly, thinking about the opportunities and the potential resilience building experience for our kids in school. What for you as parents are the small baby steps that you could take tomorrow when you go away from this that will help build your own resilience as role models, and most importantly build and nurture resilience in your kids as the leaders of tomorrow? Thank you.
Thank you, Andy and Sissy, for such a wonderful sharing tonight. There are actually a lot of good questions in the chat box already, and our admin staff has collected a list of the questions for you. So let's take a look, and we'd love to hear of your thoughts. The first question comes saying that today's sharing was great, but I'm still very anxious about the future. Do you have any advice for a very anxious parent? Who would like to answer this question?
Yeah, sure. I can take this one. I think the key thing is really to focus on your kid or your kids, not yourself here. What we really want to do is to create an environment where your child can really flourish. What does this mean? I guess, firstly, it means following their passions. And so if you can find ways to encourage them to follow the things that they really enjoy and maybe join them in it as well, that will help them flourish and enjoy their passions. And then as they do so, there will be successes along the way. So these are the things that they're really good at, and focusing on celebrating those successes will help sort of build a positive cycle, if you will. And the flip side of that is not focusing on your sort of on the perceived faults of the kid. We really want to be playing to their character strengths.
我也非常同意 Andy 说的。另外，想要补充一句，我觉得我们需要改变我们的观念和思维。其实焦虑并不一定是坏情绪，这是人类本身天然的防御机制。我们要理性的去认识它，要理解并且接受我们的焦虑，然后帮助孩子们去分解他们焦虑存在的成因，然后一起共同面对它、解决它，然后相互支持，这个也非常的重要。
Thank you for that. So would you think of a situation where grandparents, they may be very much spoiled kid and they're willing to do everything for them. So how can a parent make them understand the importance of resilience and be willing to let go?
Very good question. 因为这样子的现象也比较常见，这种呢是属于过度负责，那么在亲密关系当中非常的普遍，也有的为了让孩子取得好成绩，有的时候爸爸妈妈、爷爷奶奶都会亲自上阵，代替孩子们完成他们无法做到的事情。其实这样子的行为反复事件过度呢，会造成孩子的一个习得无助，他就会丧失掌控感和毅力品质，或者会养成任何事情总有人会为我解决的这样子的一个理所当然的想法。所以呢，我会建议，首先爸爸妈妈呀，要更多的直接参与到孩子的教育当中，去模范人性。比如说爸爸妈妈生活当中、工作当中，他们发生的一些困难，可以跟孩子聊一聊、谈一谈，让孩子自然而然的去习得。那么同时也建议可以通过开一些家庭会，把我们的一些韧性工具可视化在环境当中，比如说刚刚提到的，家里可以放一个小罐子，然后当遇到积极的、开心的、值得鼓励的事情，可以把它放在里面，写一张小纸条，一段时间可以跟孩子一起来阅读。那么当爷爷奶奶、外公外婆看到爸爸妈妈这样做的时候，也会形成这样子的习惯，正面的这样子的一个循环吧。所以说，希望爸爸妈妈可以直接的介入，然后也是从孩子那边着手。
Okay, thank you, Sissy. We've got a parent want to ask that their child has a naturally pessimistic and anxious and perfectionist personality. So they're very afraid of failure. And what should they do to support the child?
Yeah, this is a really common occurrence, I would say, in schools today. And I think this is all a question about optimism. So first of all, I guess defining that and what is optimism versus pessimism, I would say that optimism is where you have an outlook that failures are temporary, versus pessimism is where you see failures as something permanent and catastrophic. And if you're an optimist, or if you take an optimistic approach rather, then you have an outlook which says I can overcome those failures. So this is then a question of how can you learn to be optimistic. Now some of the optimism pessimism dynamic is inherited, but not all of it is, and you can learn to be optimistic. So as a parent, helping your kid challenge that catastrophic thinking by articulating it, by having a conversation about it, asking, well, what's the worst that could happen if I were to undergo some kind of failure? And actually discuss that and look at opportunities for how that through failure you can grow. And this then actually creates a positive outcome from resilience because you look at failure as an opportunity.
Failure as an opportunity. That's very insightful. Thank you, Andy. So we've got a parent whose child is very independent and always has their own ideas. So sometimes they just don't listen to adults. And of course, in those situations, the parents might worry if they let them develop freely, that probably will cause some problems as well. What's your thought on that?
我觉得首先孩子有主见，有自己的想法，是我们鼓励的。那么针对于听不进大人说的话，那我觉得首先我们要改变自己的观念。那孩子的家长要平时跟孩子有意识的共同去培养一些爱好，可能在日常就找到一些共同可以谈论的话题，不要太功利的去做沟通这件事情。这意思就是说，你不要等到你要希望他听你的话的时候再去做沟通。这个应该是沉浸在日常过程当中的，那这样子孩子就能够感受到爸爸妈妈是理解我、认可我，同时也让孩子感受到，即使我是犯了错以后，能够得到家长的原谅以及支持。那我最近其实看到一个非常好的翻译，在中文汉字里边它叫无为，英文它翻成了 natural rules， 我觉得说的非常的好。其实有的时候我们是无为而治胜过有为，要遵循孩子的一个自然的发展规律，他的一个心理规律去培养他，而不要过多的去限制他。那当然我们要找到两者之间的一个平衡，家长也不需要太焦虑。
A lot of wisdom sharing, and particularly in how to find that balance, isn't it? So talking about the independence and letting go, how do parents know when to let go and how to let their child make mistakes on their own? And when do parents need to stand in and support them?
Yeah, I can definitely speak to this with I guess a personal anecdote. I've got a 1-year-old son, and every time we go out to the park, people want to interfere. I want to let my son roll around in the mud, get dirty, explore. But often people will come up and will question, how can you let your son not wear socks? He's too cold. He needs more clothes on, and this kind of overprotecting that we were talking about before. So I think this is all about safety and creating a safe environment. And what we need to do is to make sure that there's no danger of serious harm. But once we've established that level of safety, allow the freedom to play and to explore. And when talking about a 1-year-old, I guess it's important also to look at older children and even adults, I would say, and working through the steps to recovery with them when they do come across a failure. For a young kid, it's a bit different. For an older kid, it might be more about the mental aspect or dimension of this. So helping them articulate the learning that they can get from their mistakes, helping them make visible the growth that they have had through making a mistake, through failing. And then when they see that growth, you get this sort of repeated cycle because they're more willing to do it again. And then actually, as an adult, as a parent, hopefully you don't need to step in because they can make that judgment for themselves.
我也想补充一下，我觉得这是一个非常好的问题。那首先，我也鼓励家长们要去深入的了解您的孩子，他们的长处、短处、兴趣、特长以及需要支持的地方在哪里，他们的舒适区在哪里，以及什么时候到了您的孩子的压力的临界点。那还有一个小策略，在心理学上叫做安全按钮。那么在孩子面对挫折的时候，要给他勇气去面对，要给他无条件的抚慰，要让他知道无论发生什么事情，爸爸妈妈都是你坚强的后盾，可以跟你一起并肩作战。但是如果你撑不下去了，可以使用这个安全按钮，比如说给我递一张小纸条，或者是给我发一个特殊的表情，或者给我塞一张小卡片。那么找到您孩子跟你之间的一个小的安全按钮的一个像是一个小秘密小口令一样，那你就知道在那个时候，当孩子递给你安全按钮，他就是需要得到你的帮助。
These are definitely very practical strategies, so thank you for that. And also all the tools you introduced earlier sounds great. And which method would you recommend the most?
其实每个工具都有它的特点，已经在大量不同人群上面得到了验证。但是这并不代表每个工具在您的孩子身上会发挥同样的效用。就像市面上有各种各样的感冒药，同样你得了感冒，不同的药品的敏感度会有很大的差异。所以呢，我们要去了解每个工具的本质以及背后的原理，让它变通的去使用合适你的部分。比如说在开始阶段的时候，任何新的习惯的养成和新的行为的改变都应该以始于简单，所以找到一个最简单、最好用、最有趣、最能够上手的去选择它，然后反复的去尝试。刚开始的时候也不用着急，可以找到一个反复使用以后形成了正向的效果，然后慢慢的再增加其他的工具，加大难度。所以家长们也不用太担心，先找一个开始，从简开始。
从简开始 Very well said. Thank you, Sissy and Andy, for all your additional insight sharing. We've all enjoyed it very much. That's all we have time for this evening. And thank you very much to you, our audience, for all your questions and comments in the chat box. If you still have questions about how to foster resilience and independence in education, you can always reach out to counselors and leaders in your child's school. We have prepared some key takeaways from tonight's webinar, which we will post in the chat box. And these will also be sent out to parents by your child's school. Please also note that from tomorrow and for the next 2 weeks, you will be able to watch the playback of tonight's webinar using the same QR codes and the link. A special thank you to Mr. Andy Clapperton and Ms. Sissy Shen for their insightful presentation and for answering all the questions from our community members this evening. We hope to see you next year at our new webinar series. Stay tuned. Good night.
Bye bye.
拜，再见。